right, we are live. Doc Rock, welcome back. As always, lovely to see you again, that beautiful beard. This week, a little bit different in the sense that we really wanted to dive into a topic which I feel like we haven't done specifically in a while. We've kind of like talked about topics. This one, I feel like you said you really wanted to kind of break it down and like really, talk about like the benefits, break down like why it's important and why, a lot of people when they overlook it, like really should kind of implement it in their training. Being specifically what we're talking. What's up?
I think a huge part is no one even knows about it. I mean, such a small percentage of the world knows about it.
Yeah, I mean, at that end, I think like when people think about it, it's just like, well, first of all, what we're talking about is isometric training. Yeah, so people don't even know about it. And then, once they kind of like, if they don't like dive in, like it seems kind of silly. Like if you're just kind of like glancing at it from like a surface kind of point of view.
Right.
So yeah, man, I don't know where you want to start or if you just want to dive right in here.
Yeah, let's just dive in. I mean, normally I would come out, I have like an outline or something, but this is like, it's too much to be like, all right, let's step in. I don't know. I just kind of wanted to roll with it this week. So
let's dip a toe in and see where it takes us.
I think the first thing is a true isometric is no movement. Like you're in one position, pushing against the wall, and nothing's moving. Like even you're not moving backwards. I mean, it has to be completely fixed. So true isometrics really aren't what we're talking about, but that can come into play. But even then, you're still moving.
Yeah.
But I think the basis that we need to talk about, because you can go through phases and tiers and start working your way up and doing things a lot different. Maybe we'll chat as we go on. But the basic thing that I find resets the nervous system, resets the body, brings you back to the base of the foundation of the pyramid is holding a position for extended periods of time. I have found this to be insanely beneficial. I've done it for a long time and stopped and then did it and then stopped and did it and then stopped and did it and stopped. And it seems like every time I stop implementing it for a long period of time and try and do something that isn't congruent with this, something doesn't feel good. And I'm like, all right, well, I kind of got to the point where I'm like, I get it. Like after like 9 or 10, I'm like, all right, so I'm just going to do them all the time now,
All right, this is going to be a thing now.
Yeah, it's going to be a thing. And so as I progress, I'm toying around with a bunch of different ways that I like to do it and how I want to do it. Right now, I'm only doing those and playing with them as opposed to like where you implement like one and still do the other training. But I kind of feel like I got so far out of that realm for a really long time that I want to go back and like rebuild the foundation for 6 months. Just get back into it. So what we're doing, there's so much. What we're doing is muscles are designed to absorb force. That's their job, okay? So if they cannot absorb the force, the tendon, the ligament, the joint then have to absorb force. Joints are not designed to absorb force. We have joints all over our body, right? You have spinal joints and there's discs in between them and all these other things. Well, that disc shifts, moves, blows, herniates, all of these things because that joint got asked to handle a load that it wasn't strong enough to handle because it's not supposed to handle load, right? Or repetitively.
Well, yeah, like everything in the body has a purpose, right? You said muscles are supposed to, absorb force. That's basically what we've been preaching since day one. Like the stronger you are, the better you are at handling and adapting to force. And then, so joints are then like their specific purpose is movement, right? You move about your joints, right? They connect two different bones, 2, 3, whatever. And, they're designed to facilitate movement of the human body. So anyway, continue, sorry.
No, I mean, but then the muscle should be able to transfer that energy to the other muscle on the other side of the joint and move and free flow that way.
Yeah.
What happens is we get disconnected from our body, our muscles, our movement, our this, our that, and then everything kind of gets skewed and messed up and this doesn't know how to fire when that fires, and this doesn't know how to move when that moves, and all these things start to happen. And when that happens, the joint takes on more force, force, period. And after either it takes on a shit ton of force in one time or a bunch of micro forces over time, it starts to degenerate, degrade, whatever you want to call it, because the body isn't absorbing force the way it's supposed to. So we want to rewrite that whole system before we do anything else. And in order to do that, we have to teach the body how to absorb force. So a lot of people are out there moving 100, 200, 300, 500 pounds, but they haven't even really learned how to absorb force first. And they're absorbing that force. Before you can produce force, you have to absorb it into the body and create an explosive maneuver based off of that. So we want to teach the body how to absorb force, and we want to teach it how to do it against gravity, because that's a fine source of energy to fight against, right? And so we stick with, I like anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, and that's what generally everybody says. You'll have some people say you get no results unless you do it for 5 minutes and whatever. I do it much like you do, right? Basics, starting from the basics again. I'm like, all right. And what I found, if I do 1 minute, let's just do the lunge. So I'm doing a lunge, and we'll get to kind of how to do these later. It's just, this is why it needs to be a very non-linear conversation. But so I'm holding a lunge. So I decide to do it for a minute, right? Each leg. Crush it. Now I go to 2 minutes.
Yep.
Do that a couple times with no breaks, nonstop. Then I go to 3 minutes, no breaks, nonstop. 4 minutes, no breaks, nonstop. When I get there, after I hit it once, I'm going to 5, because depending on your emotional status that day, the 4 to 5 window can be altered, and that's a whole way down the road conversation about how the emotions play a role in it. So I get there and then I just go, right? And that's what I do. So I hold the same position for 5 minutes. Now, I have found that when I do it that way, I stick with it and am way more consistent, and I'm good, right? There's another way that people tell you is that right off the bat, you go straight to 5 minutes of working time. So you hold this lunge position, and maybe you hold it for 45 seconds and you fail. Well, then you get back up and maybe you get right back in it. Fail at 30 seconds. Now you're at a minute and 15. Right back up, hold it, maybe you hold it a minute. Boom, now you're at 2:15 of working time, right? You get back up, you press back in it. So you had 5 minutes of total working time.
Yeah, so every time you fail or you take a break, you stop the clock. So you're doing the 5 minutes. It's not a running clock.
Correct. No, you're doing the 5 minutes of work, but you're not taking 2 or 3 minutes in between each set. It's 3 breaths back into it. So where at the end you're holding it for 3 or 4, you're basically standing up to fall back down at first, right? I love that in the context of
I did not.
In the context of a week or 2, I found that I could handle that style of training. As soon as I got past like a week or 2, I really found it difficult to find, I don't want to say the inspiration, but life was kind of starting to get in the way. And I got to be careful how I word it, because you make choices in everything you do.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can tell you how I felt because when we did them together, that's how we started, right? We started with the 5 minute, you're going to do 5 goddamn minutes, no matter if it takes you like 5 minutes or 15 minutes. I found, I definitely had like improvement doing it that way. Like you obviously build up, if you want to call it tolerance, or you build up the strength or the mental fortitude or whatever, basically D, all the above. However, I believe that I was not able to get to that 5 minute period either as quickly or even ever based off that method. To me, it didn't necessarily work for me because I reached a point where it was just, honestly, I'll call it dread. I was just, like I gotta do this again, like sort of thing. Whereas now, how I'm doing it now, like I said, I do 2 a day and I kind of rotate through them before I continue with the rest of my training. I started everything in 2 minutes because I was just like, I can do 2 minutes. Like anybody can do anything for 2 minutes. So I started at 2 minutes, and then once I felt like, all right, once I knew, like in my head, there was no doubt in my mind, I was sitting in that lunge and I was going to knock out 2 minutes, then I bumped it up to 3. Same thing. Maybe I failed that first time. Maybe I made it to like 2:30, stopped the clock, hop back in, knocked out the last 30 seconds. When I got to that where I knew every time I was getting in that lunge, I was knocking out 3 minutes, boom, bump it up to 4. Same thing. This week, I think I'm doing 1 more week of 4 minutes for these lunges now. And I'm pretty sure I've kind of reached that point where I'm just like, all right, I got this every single time. So I'll do 1 more week at 4, and then I'll bump it up to 5. And that, for me, that's worked because I've seen progression. It's allowed me to, and I touched on this briefly, I think last week or 2 weeks, whenever we did the last one. For me, the hardest part about these is the first and last 30 seconds. It's the first 30 seconds because it's uncomfortable and you're just like, oh God, like I got 4 more minutes of this. And it's the last 30 seconds because like, yeah, you're getting a little tired or whatever. But like I've reached that point where, you know, I'm ready to move. All right?
Yeah. And it's so for me, it's like I'm so torn between the two because I've seen crazy results with both. But what I have seen is it is easier.
Preference.
It is.
I prefer the second one. Yeah.
I actually prefer the second way too, because I found that it's easierly digestible.
Yeah.
With everything else I have going on in life. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it takes a little longer to see the results or whatever, but it's easierly digestible. Now, if you were injured and you were coming to me, or if you were an athlete and you were coming to me, way 1, 5 minutes, working time, day 1, go. I don't care about your dread. It's different, right? Because I think we have to meet, and people will argue back and forth. I just don't care. Like, what is going to get you to move consistently and do it over the course of time? Because I guarantee you the person that does these holds for 2 weeks for 5 minutes and doesn't continue doesn't get the results you get over the course of 2 years by finally working your way up to 5 minutes. Like, it's still insane. So either way, I don't care if you've gotten to 4 and then worked your way to 5, you're still doing it for 5 minutes. It sucks. I don't care how often you do it. It's going to blow. Like, it's not going to be fun. So for me, I think I like that. But I will say that there is really, to me, this is all mental and spiritual training. Like, you're telling and taking your body to a brink of like, holy shit, what's happening? And everything's literally telling you to stop. And you're regaining complete control of your body and being like, nope, we're not stopping. I'm in control. We're doing 2 more seconds. We're doing 2 more seconds. We're doing 2 more seconds. Like, you know, like we can do 2 more and you go. And then after, I think the biggest result is the mindset after of like, I can do whatever the fuck, like nothing matters now because I just did that. And I know no one does that. So like you, this whole mental attitude of like, I can handle whatever in life, it starts to creep in. And I think that's, this rehabs you from injury, and it makes you really strong, and it builds your foundation. But that mental attitude of like, I'm a fucking boss is way more valuable to me than any of those other benefits, I guess.
I mean, there's 100% a mental aspect to this because it is, I would argue that it's more mentally strenuous than it is physically. Because, you know, if you're lifting 400 pounds, like there's only certain people in the world who can physically lift 400 pounds. It's not a mind over matter thing. It's you cannot lift 400 pounds. Right. You can hold yourself up. Everyone can hold themselves up.
That's what I love about it.
For the most part, everyone can hold themselves up. So this is just, it's your mind, you know, obviously you interpret pain and discomfort and blah, blah, blah. So it's your mind telling yourself, this is uncomfortable, knock it off. And you saying, no. Like,
no. I mean, it's very intense in that aspect of like, and I think you gain so much ground mentally that it makes it invaluable. And so what you want to do is a wall squat, a lunge. You want to, 90-degree angle at the knee, 90-degree angle at the ankle. Boom, and you just sit there and you just resist gravity. You don't let your ass come off the wall. You have your shoulder blades back, your arms on under your legs, and you just sit there. And as the time goes, you'll go, like if this is the wall and this is your butt, it'll just start going like this.
Sink a little bit, yeah.
It'll just sink a little. Maybe at the end of 5 minutes, you're like that. So the muscles are expanding and contracting, and you're learning to send a signal everywhere, and the mind is regaining complete control of the body, and you're not taking this no for an answer. That's the way to start, right? And just start doing that for a minute. And then after you've done it 2 times, do it, work your way up to 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, what might happen is at 1:30, you fail. Stand back up, 3 deep breaths, back into it for those last 30 seconds. The most important part, though, is you're doing this as the aspect of like, I'm holding it for 3 fucking minutes and I'm not stopping.
Yeah.
Like you need it. When it gets uncomfortable and if you stop, I don't know how to explain that isn't the point. The point is taking you to that point. and then working 2 or 3 seconds longer.
Yeah, pushing
and then
through.
1 second longer, and then a half a second longer, and then you fail. You literally work until the body quits on you.
Yeah.
It may not, right? And the mind starts to overcome that. That point, those last 3 seconds, is where all the magic happens in the brain and the body, right? That's you're basically holding a position for 3 to 5 minutes to get 3 seconds of the magic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
And there's different ways to do it. So that's where I tell everybody, start at that basic progression of just holding and resisting gravity for 5 minutes. The next phase, which I find so holds for me were definitely the hardest thing I've ever done training wise.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think you would agree with that. So the other,
unless you maybe like run a significant distance, but
yeah,
but I don't do that. So yeah,
yeah, I don't do that, and even if I did, I would just run slower. Like you can't hold slower. Like, I mean? Like
speed up
all right,
time.
so run a 7-minute mile. Well, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to run a 10-minute mile, but I'm still moving, so it's whatever. Like you can't change anything. Like it is what it is. You're in this position. The time's running. Hang on, motherfucker. Like, it is what it is. But the one thing that then, like, all right, so let's say you hit the wall squat for 5 minutes, right? You can hammer it out. Boom, I got 5 minutes. So then the next phase for me is now you learn to absorb force. Let's learn to create some more force.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to sit into the wall squat, and I like to pretend that there's a band that comes down like a swing. It's sitting underneath me, right? And then that band's attached to the ceiling, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the wall squat, and that band's tight. And I'm trying to pull down with my feet, my calves, and my hamstrings. I'm trying to pull my ass down and contract so hard that I can rip those chains out of the ceilings and the seat comes flying out from under me, right?
Okay.
And then I beat down. While I'm doing that, the quads are contracting to not let me go anywhere. Does that make sense? Like, so you have this interplay now. So this is a real maximal contraction. I'm firing as absolutely as hard as I can for as long as I can, right? And then you kind of time that contraction. Like, all right, at 17 seconds, I was able to contract, right?
Okay.
You stop that. Or let's say 15 seconds. I was able to contract as hard as I could. You'll feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you go to the point where you can hold something for 5 minutes, you're going to feel it's very interesting. At first, I was getting back into everything, and I'm like, I tried to go right to this. I tried to go right to the contractions, right?
You got greedy?
Yeah, I got greedy. Well, they weren't contracting together. They weren't contracting as much as they used to. I was having a hard time finding that pattern again, right? And I was like, God damn it. So, but what will happen is you'll be trying to contract and they're not doing it, and then boom, all of a sudden you're going to feel them go for like 2 or 3 seconds. You're going to be like, oh, that's it. I'm looking for that again, right?
Hello there.
So, once you get to that point where you can contract those hamstrings, you're doing it. So let's say my maximal contraction is 15 seconds of all out, just right? And you don't hold your breath to pass out, but you're pulling as hard as you can. Stop the timer because you'll feel it. You'll feel it not be that maximal contraction again. Stop the timer. That's the set.
Okay.
Right? So 15 seconds. Then you get up, take 3 deep breaths, back down, 15 seconds as hard as you can again. Pull. Stop at 15 seconds. Now you got 30 seconds of working. Do that until you get to 5 minutes. Now this is a whole nother game where you're contracting the working muscles and you're pulling into that position. Oh my good Lord, is it intense. But that one, and I don't know if we've ever talked about doing that one, but if you do it that way, so what I want you to do is get to 5 minutes this week, and then I want you to switch to that method that I just told you. So the contraction, as you know, can be anywhere from 3 seconds to 40, but 20, my opinion, 28 to 40 is really professional athlete style endurance. Yeah. You're not going to maximally contract for 30 seconds. The average bear, not probably going to, right? You'll get there if you do these long enough.
Yeah, not right off the bat.
But not right off the bat. So do that. Stop. You're gonna love it because it's just an all-out max. It's like a max. It's like a 1 rep max.
Yeah.
And so you do that for 5 minutes. That one to me is so much more fun and so much more easily digestible because I'm just like, oh, I got this. It's 15 seconds. This is my sets. Like instead of doing 10 sets of bench, I'm going to do 10 sets of 30 seconds on this. Boom, that's it. Like, I'm in.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's why I tried to skip the 5 minutes. Because I'm just going to go this way.
Let me get to the good stuff.
Well, it's just easier, like, to stay consistent with something that's you're better at. I'm better at that.
Yeah.
So you
also enjoy it more, so that makes it better.
Exactly. But I think another valuable part of this is, like, training is not really supposed to be your favorite part of your day. You're kind of supposed to not like it a little bit.
It's a little love-hate.
Yeah. Love how you feel after, Yeah. But, so I guess then in ISO, the way we do a hold is you basically want to take a body to the most extreme joint angle. So, like, if I'm doing a bicep, like hold or something, I'm out, like, if that's completely straight, I would have weight here, and, like, that would be the ISO.
Okay.
Like, straight and just right above, like, where, like, the most extreme joint angle you can take it to. And then as you fail, it will, does that make sense? Same with.
Yeah, so you're kind of training it in almost a fully lengthened position.
So there is stuff with that. So what's happening there is you're training. The reason you're doing this in the fully lengthened position, the eccentric contraction, is because an eccentrically contracted muscle is designed to absorb force. A concentrically contracted muscle is designed to produce force.
Yeah.
We're learning to absorb force, and we need to learn that in the eccentrically contracted muscles.
That's why, and don't quote me, because I'm pretty sure I heard this somewhere, but I can't tell you where or when or from whom.
Okay.
But a lot of sports or athletic injuries generally happen on an eccentric contraction.
That would be correct.
Right? I mean, it also makes sense.
I don't know the science.
I don't know. Again, I don't know the study. I don't know who said it. It's definitely something I read at some point in my life. And it makes sense, because if you think about the modern strength training program for most athletes, it's all about delivering force. It's all about max contraction. It's all about lifting as much weight as possible, which, again, is all a part of that concentric contraction. So the fact that, a lot of people skip the eccentric part, like whether you're bench pressing and you're, bouncing off your chest on the way down instead of lowering the weight or pulling the bar to your chest as opposed to just letting it fall on you, you're missing a whole half of the workout.
All the time.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because even really good strong man programs or people that I've followed, I've never heard them talk about it.
Yeah.
Just control it on the way down, or whatever. Like, there's a lot more to it than just controlling on the way down.
I was guilty of it this morning. So this morning, we're working out in the garage, and it's about 30 degrees now in New Jersey at 5 o'clock in the morning. I 100% caught myself fucking bouncing the barbell off my chest this morning. I was like, oh, wait, hang on a second.
For 25 years, that's all you did, because no one taught you anything. I mean, it's,
you get, your ass is freezing, and you revert back to what you know.
100%. You revert back to the old habits. So that's what this is doing. It's rewiring new habits. It's teaching the muscle, the eccentric muscle, to turn on when the concentric muscle turns on, and vice versa. And if they don't know how to interplay like that, that's why you see running backs pull hamstrings and defensive backs pull quads. Defensive backs are running backwards all the time, so their hamstrings are very strong and overdeveloped, and running backs are running forward all the time, and their hamstrings are underdeveloped. Running backs never pull quads. DBs never pull hamstrings. Like, it just doesn't happen, right? But then they don't train the other muscle. They don't know how to interplay together, right? And so one of the things I do, like, as a hamstring pull, so you're standing, you're bent over, and you're using your shins, your quads, your abs to pull yourself through your legs without your hands touching your hamstrings, right? So most people, all right, maybe I can just show you. Because it's going to be hard if I don't, right? So
it's like you're bending down to touch your toes and pull your head in between your knees.
Yeah, so most people do this, right?
No.
Right? You're here, you're pulling yourself like that, right? In essence. So
I remember that.
Yeah. So what happens? So what happens happens here is the first version where you have your hands on the back and you're stretching your hamstrings. You're doing that and you're telling yourself, all right, when I pull down because you're pulling with your hands, your hamstrings are stretching into an eccentric contraction, but your quads aren't contracting because they're not doing any work. So your brain thinks, okay, when my hamstrings eccentrically contract, my quad doesn't do anything, right? So then what happens is you go play your sport and you go to run backwards or you go to sprint forward as a running back and your quad contracts and your hamstring doesn't know what to do, or your hamstring's trying to contract and your quad doesn't know what to do. Now you pop or pull or do one of these other things because you never let them integrate together. When you're pulling yourself forward and you're using your quads to contract, which then is causing the hamstring to eccentrically contract to stabilize the joint, you're learning the interplay between the quad concentric contraction and the hamstring's eccentric contraction, right? Now the brain has control of each, and when one fires, the other fires, and they know exactly what to do. Now you don't pull quads or hamstrings. Makes sense?
It does. Yeah, no, it does.
And I mean, you like people want to get faster or stronger, and so they and I saw people doing this all the time in CrossFit. No one really does the hamstrings. It's all quad stuff. I had some people I just had them start doing the glute ham holds that we do, right?
Yeah.
Kid took first place in the games on a sprint and he says the hamstring holds, the glute ham hold. Because what happened is his body started to learn to integrate and turn on his hamstrings for the first time. Well, okay, if you could use a quad and run really fast, imagine if the hamstring knows what to do too. It's like turbo.
Both sides of the legs.
Both sides of the legs. Like if you know how to use both sides, oh my good God, like you are faster and stronger. That goes for every muscle, everywhere on the body, all over the place. So I don't know. Does that make sense? Maybe I should.
No, it does. It definitely does. Because what you're saying is essentially that you're using this specific exercise, the one you just showed us, to maximally contract the hamstrings and the quads to teach the body to use them in unison. Whereas generally when people are training, if you're doing a quad exercise like a squat, yes, you're using your hamstrings, but it's quad dominant. If you're doing an RDL or some sort of hinge, yes, you're using your quads for stability, but it's dominantly a hamstring exercise. This is something where you're using them and you're integrating them together, so they're learning to work together. Your brain is learning to fire them together, which is how they're supposed to be used. They're antagonistic muscles. They're supposed to balance each other out. There's that push and pull around the joint that that's the whole reason why you bend your knees. Because when you flex your hamstring, your knee bends, and when you extend or flex your quad, it straightens up. Oh, you there?
Yeah.
You there? Oh, there.
No,
You're a little choppy. Hang on a second. There you go. Yeah. Talk to me.
Yep.
All right, I can hear you. You're just kind of jumping around a little bit.
All right. Well, I'll try not to move. I'll stay real.
Just don't do anything.
Oh, my hands
Well, we'll do something. Actually, for a second, I was just like, "What? Did he freeze again?"
So, oh man, you got me all. I got my. It's the most easy, hard. It's like everything in life. It's like this is a universal principle. It's going to be super easy. But
generally, the easiest things to do, or the simplest things to do, are like the hardest to do, or that doesn't make sense, but like it makes sense if that makes any sense.
Right.
It's just like the best things or the easiest things to do, or the simplest things to do aren't necessarily the easiest things to do. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Right.
But I've found the most bang for the buck in all of those things. So for me, it's like, all right, just try without getting crazy into it or anything. I don't know. Pick something. A lunge. Lunge is a little more complex. Stick with a wall.
Yeah, I was doing wall sit first. Start with 2 feet on the floor.
Start with 2 feet on the floor. Do a wall squat. Get your ankles at 90 degrees, your knees at 90 degrees, so your ass is, legs are parallel to the ground or whatever.
Yeah.
Feet are hip width apart, not shoulder width apart. I'm not really sure where that came from, but keep them hip width apart for this. Toes pointed forward, not like this or like that, just pointed forward. Butt against the wall, shoulder blades against the wall, and just slide down. Nope, don't put your hands on your knees. I have an old school
Stopwatch.
Yeah, because the iPhone distracts me because then I look at the time. When I look at the time, you get all fucked up. You could be at 2 minutes and you're like, I can hold this all fucking day. I'm just sitting here hanging out. And then all of a sudden, somehow you
creep down. Yeah.
You creep down and it says 2:01 and you're like, oh my God, then your legs start shaking and you're done for it.
Because I do it the opposite way. I do a timer so it counts down. So I can put the timer on, I can set it on the bench or wherever, like turn it off, and then I can just go until it yells at me. Yeah.
See, as I'm progressing up, I want to know because I generally won't be able to go for, depending 3 minutes to 4 minutes, maybe I failed at 3 minutes and 35 seconds.
Yeah. See, I never wanted to know. I hate knowing.
Okay. So because then I get back up and finish it, I guess. So mine was like, I could feel the button. Mm-hmm. So I can just have it in my hand. And I felt like the iPhone, you can't feel that you pushed it on.
Yeah.
So like when I get in the position, it's just click.
Yeah.
And then it's hanging there. And then if I fail, I can click and go, 3 minutes and 38 seconds. I got to get up and do, 6 more seconds or whatever.
Yes.
Get up, deep breath, boom, push it in. That's why I do that.
Yeah, the only reason why I didn't like that was because at some point or other you do have to look, otherwise you're going to be there for like a half hour. So,
I wish we could get the stopwatch to count down.
Yeah, and they could like buzz or something. There's got to be like a buzzer or something. Stopwatch.
Yeah,
it's probably like a $20 stopwatch.
Yeah, I also got like a $3.13 stopwatch.
Yeah,
I just need one button. Like how expensive? So maybe I'll find that because they surely have to have that, but. So what I would tell people is, look, just see how you feel. Go sit on the wall, start with a minute. When you get to a minute, go to 2 minutes. And however long it takes you, get to 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. When you get to 5 minutes, shit in your life's going to start changing. You're gonna have a clearer mind.
I would argue even before that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
When you hit 3 minutes straight.
3 minutes is a game changer.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, 3 minutes is a decent chunk of time. If you're just like doing one thing, and it is a strenuous thing, 3 minutes is a long time.
Yeah, it's strenuous. It's like you need to be able to really go somewhere in your mind. It's that a lot of people don't want to go. You're sitting there with yourself because I don't use music because I want to find out that. We didn't get really into like the spiritual aspect of this, but for me, it's a spiritual experience, right? Like the times that I've had outer body experiences were times when I was either doing this style of training or another version of this style of training. That's when I've had my outer body meditative experiences where I'm literally like, what? I'm like, whoa. Like, But to me, so I'm like, all right, there's a link here for me into spirituality somehow.
Sure.
I'm taking my body to the brink. My mind I have to drop the body. Like I have to drop the physical and just go completely mental. Like, and I'm here and I'm just experiencing this experience. It's like when I hit that, the times I've hit that, I'm like, should I just stay here for 20 minutes?
Well, that makes total sense because that's every person that I've ever heard or read that like talked about like meditation or anything. That's what they're talking about. It's talking about being in the moment, not having your mind drift and be elsewhere. It's like literally what you just said. It's experiencing what you experience, being in the moment, feeling the pain or the stress or the whatever, but being here and experiencing it. And like that makes total sense to me. That you would have these kind of experiences because it seems to be like the perfect situation for this kind of experience to occur.
See, and it makes sense to me. And like, so when you get to 3 minutes and you play in that 3 to 5 minute window, the amount of food you're going to fucking consume is just from you're going to be like, what is happening? Like, tell me your digestive system doesn't ramp up like crazy and that you start eating so much more protein. You'll just start craving. But I noticed that sleep gets better. Then I started having some dreams. I thought that was very interesting, right? So something was being awakened. But for me, I've always liked to push the boundaries physically, and I don't like to just sit and stop. And I think that this, like, you need to be able to sit, you need to be able to stop. I like to do that, but I like to do it on my own time. I don't like to just sit there and try and force myself to meditate for 10 minutes whenever. Like, it's just not my thing. I've done it for months on end, and I can never clear my mind. So I'm like, all right, I need to.
I've actually been like trying to meditate recently, and it's really goddamn hard.
Yeah,
it's so funny. Like, well, it was in that book that I told you I read, that brainwash book.
Yeah,
it was talking about the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala and the relationship between all that, blah blah blah. And they had a very short chapter on meditation, like the benefits and blah blah blah. I'm not gonna like get into it,
right?
But like, it was just like, yeah, you know what? Like, I felt like I should try this. Like, how hard could it be? It's goddamn hard. Like, I maybe focus on like 2 breaths, and then my mind is completely somewhere else. What am I doing today? Well, what about this? Blah, blah, blah. And then like 30 seconds goes by, and you're just like, oh, I'm completely not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. This is exactly what you're not supposed to be doing. And then you focus on like 3, 4, maybe 5 breaths, and then your mind is racing somewhere else. Like, it's really super tough. And I've actually, where some people might find that frustrating, I actually find it invigorating. Because to me, I was just like, wow, this is something that I clearly need to work on, because I am not good at it at all. Right. So I've actually like taken that as like a challenge, and maybe that's not like the correct mindset to go into meditation with. It's like a challenge, but like
people would argue that.
But you understand like what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I get it 100%, and I'm like that. So
yeah,
I suppose, and this is a whole nother topic, because I love meditation. I think everybody should do some form of it. And when I say form of it, this is kind of what I mean. So for me, why would I? There was a story. I can't remember what it was. Like where a monk could go in a minute to such a deep meditative state, right? Boom, right there. Maybe it takes someone who's beginner experienced 5 hours in meditation to enter that state that he enters in 1.5 seconds for maybe a half a second, and then you're back out of it, right? So I don't necessarily think there's one way to do anything, because you may not find it the same way I do. But when I'm in that lunge and I breathe and I'm focused on my breath in that lunge, it just happens. It naturally pulls me away. It naturally clears my mind. All I think about is that breath. Nothing else enters. Maybe that's how I've been conditioned as a child or through sports, because I had a love for it, love for pushing my body and doing all these things. Yeah. But I find that there, right? So in that, if I can get to a deep meditative state that my mind is clear, well then why would I sit somewhere for 2 hours? Yeah. Like, I'm not trying to become a monk, you know? So
it makes sense.
But then what I find is, once I learn how to access that in this system that I've created, right? Once I've learned to access that, then I can pull it into other aspects of my life easier. So if I felt like sitting and meditating 15 minutes, I would be able to focus on my breath a whole lot longer. If I needed to just instantly calm myself because my daughter is getting crazy and I'm like, it's because of my energy. All right, deep breaths. Let's just get back to where we're at. Like, it can come easier, but it's my access point.
Sure.
If that makes sense, right?
And I think anyone who, you know, is experienced in meditation would argue that that's 100% the point.
Probably.
Like, there is no right or wrong way necessarily to meditate, as long as it's getting you to where, you know, the state or the mindset of where you need to be. Everything you're saying makes complete sense to me. And I agree with it.
That's really like, that's the benefit. Like, the other stuff's just like, all right, cool, I can rid my body of every single injury I've ever had, and I can get stronger and healthier and more capable of doing whatever I want. That's cool. But like, I want that mental edge that's like, whoa, You know, I mean,
well, I mean, look, the ISOs were a huge part of my recovery from the herniated disc. Like I said, I started with body weight stuff and some, you know, isometric stuff, and I would start for like a minute. Like that was my starting point, and then you know, just work my way up from there.
well, really, the principle underlying all of it is a shit ton of movement. Like an ISO or the holds that we do is just one really long movement, which then equals thousands of movements because it's held over the course of time. So thousands of contractions are taking place. So it's a bunch, because you're not in the same place you were when you started. Like if you hold the wall squat, you'll be 6 inches lower.
Yeah, like you said earlier, I think it was like one of the first things you said is what we're talking about isn't true isometrics where you're, you know, pushing against the wall or pushing against like an immovable object, right?
Yeah.
You're holding your body in a position against gravity. And inevitably over the course of time, your body's going to shift, it's going to move. Yeah, and that's why it will eventually help with mobility too, because it's going to allow your body to stay strong and to be able to, you know, extend, you know, the range of motion over the joints that you're training.
Yeah, your mobility is through the roof with this.
Yeah,
It's going to start to turn everything on. And shit, what were we talking about?
We were talking about how it's not true isometric. Well, again, what we're talking about isn't true isometric. True isometrics would be like, I actually even that wasn't necessarily an isometric.
Right.
When I was in college, I participated as in part of a study against it. They called it like an isometric training machine, but it wasn't actually isometric. It moved. So what it did was the machine moved at a set pace.
Okay.
So I was going to push against this machine as it came towards me. And no matter how hard I pushed, it was still coming towards me at the same exact speed. It was clearly like going to overpower. And then what would happen is like it was handles. So I would like push against the handles as they would come towards me, and I would pull against them as they would be pulled away from me.
Right.
They classified it as isometric, obviously, because there was motion. It was not isometric. Technically, if you break down the word isometric into its Greek components, it's isos or isos, I don't know how you pronounce it, which means equal, and then metric is measure. So equal measure, meaning like both sides are equal, they're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so I participated in that study. Again, technically not isometrics, but to give an example of a true isometric exercise would be, again, this is completely like an anecdotal example. I forget who it was, but there was some strong man who used to just like pull on like iron bars, like old-timey jail iron bars, and he used to just pull on them. That's true isometrics. You're not moving, the bars aren't moving until he got strong enough and actually pulled them apart.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway, I don't know if that helps re-jog what you're trying to think of, but
well, yeah, but I guess so to me it's, again, it comes back to the spiritual mental component of it. So you're really trying to access a level that has no limits, right? So if I'm in the ISO and I reached a true meditative alpha state, well, no limits exist anymore because I'm technically not really participating in physics or reality. Like I'm outside of what we believe is reality. So now there's no limits.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, you see evidence in this because if there's 315 on the bench bar, we talked about this, you perceive it as that, you think it's heavy, this is what it is. Well, if I put sensors on it and told you to get to your max contraction and push, you could produce more than 315 pounds of force. But for some reason, you have the limited belief system about 315 being a lot of plates on a bar. Now you can't do one rep. It's all mind. It's all mental. So if we can shatter that mindset, that mentality in these ISOs, then we're literally becoming limitless, because there is a side of us when we leave that plane, this plane, that can accomplish insane things. And they used to talk about this in insane asylums. There were women that were, I don't know, 110-pound women, sweet as can be, whatever. And when they had a bipolar psychotic episode, they literally could take the bars on their jail cell and rip them and bend them open. 110 pounds. But when she had this experience, and this isn't just one thing.
It's like the mothers who like lift cars and like the baby like is underneath or something.
You literally go. Sorry, you literally this thing away.
Right? You okay over there?
Notification keeps coming up about this update. I won't update it. But anyways, so you literally you all, because if something's going to run over your child, you're not thinking that this is heavy or whatever. You go into this state.
No, you just I need to stop this. Yeah.
I need to stop this, and it's literally an alpha brainwave state. Your brain changes waves and frequencies, and it connects with something that they're seeing now. Whatever, it doesn't matter, right? It literally increases its brainwave frequency to a frequency that does crazy shit, and now you're limitless, and you lift an entire car, right? And so, someone during a psychotic break or whatever's happening with them, their mind literally, they drop the mind. They drop that physical reality, and now they're not steel bars, they're twigs. It doesn't matter. And they just, and it happens. It doesn't just sometimes happen. I mean, I can go on about this.
Yeah, no, it's actually, it's funny that we got here, because this is not a place I thought we would get in the isometric conversation. No, it's fine. I'm not complaining. The reason why it's funny, though, is because I did a different podcast earlier with another chiropractor who, by the way, I kind of want to connect you guys because I think you guys would be phenomenal together. But he's been very much getting into the like mental and neurological just effects that the brain has on the body, to the point where he was reading a study about a woman who had, dissociative identity disorder, who had like 6 or 7 different personalities, one of which was diabetic. The 6 others were not, but the one that was literally changed the physiology of her body and the chemical makeup to where that personality needed insulin. The rest of them did not.
Yep.
So like I've always like the power the mind has over the body is absolutely bananas.
Keep talking.
No, it's absolutely bananas, and it's to me, there is no way that we will ever be able to fully like comprehend like the power of the human brain and the human mind. No. Because it's like that to me, that small little thing, like the fact that like the brain told her body that she was a diabetic. So during the 5 to 10 minutes that she was this different person, her body behaved as a diabetic's would.
I mean, I told you about that study with the milkshakes. Their bodies literally made the supposed perfectly green milkshake had the exact same reaction as the shitty, sugary chocolate one.
No, I don't think you told me.
So they did a study where they took.
Sorry.
I thought I talked about it. They did a study where they took like the super ridiculously healthy milkshake, and they took the super shitty like peanut butter and a pound of sugar and like fucking chocolate ice cream milkshake, right?
Sounds delicious.
So they took 2 milkshakes and they told the groups, this is the green one, this is what's there. I don't know if it was green, but this is the super healthy one. It's going to create this inside of your body. This is what they say it does. And then they gave them the other group, the ridiculously shitty chocolate one. And they're like, this will create like a crazy insulin spike and you'll be blah, 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 and then you'll get tired and all these things will happen, right? Mm-hmm. Then they did the research study and they drank them and they tested them down to a cellular level of what was happening and all this other stuff. And exactly what they told them would happen with the good one and the shitty one happened, except that they switched them. So the people that thought they got the good one got the shitty, like 3,000 calorie sugar one, but down to the cellular level reacted exactly how they would react if they had the green, beautiful, good, healthy smoothie.
Yeah, that's nuts.
So it's just like this stuff's all over the place. I don't know if you would probably dig it. Some people may, I don't know if you listen to us, I guess you would probably dig it, but look up the documentary on YouTube. It's the John of God in Brazil.
Okay.
So he does what they call psychic surgeries, right? And he actually has and he'll actually go in and do surgeries. He'll cut people open, he'll remove tumors, and he'll put shit up your nose and do crazy stuff. People don't bleed. They don't have any of the nosocomial infections or whatever when you get that infection from the hospital. Like his infection rate, Well, no, like it's called just an infection. I believe they call it like nosocoma or something.
Okay.
I can't remember. Forever ago since I took that stupid class. But so basically an infection from going to the hospital and having surgery, right? Like there's a high risk if you stay because it's a dirty place, you know?
Yeah.
So even the most sterile places, surgical centers in the US still couldn't compare to his, like, he basically has no infections after surgery ever, like nothing, okay? So I think it was in the documentary, it says who it is, like MIT or whatever it is. These medical doctors and these doctors just started going to study him because they're like, what? People fly from all over the world to see him. And they like can't walk, and then they'll get up and walk. Their crutches, the crutches are gone, cancer's gone. Like, and he's healing people. And he tells you that he just channels surgeons that have passed, and he does these surgeries, right? And this is what he does. They tell him what to do. That's what he says. But they hook him up to this brain thing to scan his brain, and he's going into an alpha brainwave state, basically a meditative state that takes him out of what we perceive as the reality and their belief in him and his abilities. They don't bleed, they don't get sick, and they get better. I mean, dude, watch the documentary. It's why
I'm gonna have to, because that's even pushing it a little bit for me. So,
I know. So, dude, like, but they've studied him, and it's his brain. His brain, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, you leave reality. You leave. We could talk a lot about this, but reality. Reality is only what we really perceive it to be. It's just an illusion. Like everything is an illusion. And when you understand it's an illusion from a deeper way, then you can transcend reality in essence. I mean, that's really the point of a monk, or that's what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like that's
No, that I get.
Monks put a spiked thing here and bend it, and I mean they can hang from the. I mean stuff like. Because they transcend the reality that we see.
Yeah. No.
So this guy figured out how to do it with healing. I mean, I'm just telling you what he says about channeling. I'm indifferent. Like, to me, it's like, all right, if that's what you want to do, and you say,
well, if that's what gets you there, then yeah, sure.
That's my thing. If that gets him to the alpha frequency, that then creates the ability to do that. That's no different than me doing the hold to get to the alpha frequency that allows me to change my body or something.
Like we said like 15, 20 minutes ago, there's no wrong way to reach that meditative state as long as you get there.
Yep. And it's pretty incredible. And I mean, remember, it's a documentary and it's old and it only covers an hour and a half. Like people really dive in. But yeah, people either love them or hate them because they're like, we don't understand it, so we hate it. And I'm like, well, dude's got a lot of fucking wheelchairs that were left there, so he did something right. Look, like the person who hates it, if you're a doctor, tell me how many wheelchairs you've gotten people out of, and then we can have a conversation. If it's more than him, let's talk. If it's none, then I don't know. To me, I don't care. I mean, I've said it since the beginning. If I heard of somebody who hit somebody over the back of the head with a shoe and people got better, I would go study and figure out what the hell was happening.
What's in that shoe?
It's in that shoe, bro. But anyways, it's all comes back to the same principles of basically meditation, calming the mind, and transcending that reality.
Yeah.
I love where the podcast ended up going.
No, dude. I mean, absolutely. I mean,
how many times? If anybody's been an athlete, or if you've read a book where you've been, almost everybody's had to experience that state at least once in their life. People call it the zone or the whatever.
Yeah. Where you're outside yourself and
you're transcending reality. Like if you've ran the ball in a game where you've watched the guy throws 110 mile an hour baseball, and for some reason this one time it looks like it's coming in retarded slow motion. And you don't realize until after. Yeah, just and you smash it. Like, and you're like, my God, that was the slowest thing ever. Like, I remember plays in football where I was like, I'm just walking here and I'm going to jump over. Like I look back and I'm like, and then all of a sudden I like end up in the end zone and I'm like, I don't know what the hell just happened. But it was like this effortless, like, and then like after you literally almost come back and you're like, well, that must have been the zone. Like, but you were in a different, like, your brain had to change its perception of reality to slow it down that much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does, because I know what you're talking, because I've totally experienced that on the field where,
Right.
you know, I played baseball and football, but mostly in baseball when, you know, they could throw that ball, 100 miles an hour, and it just looks like a meatball coming towards you. And it doesn't matter where it's thrown, how fast, what kind of pitch. You're just like, this thing, I'm going to tattoo this motherfucker.
Yep. That's the zone. That's the alpha brainwave state. You're in a meditative state when that happens. But we have to sell you shit. So we have to tell you that it's the zone and how to get this, how to get the zone.
Drink more Gatorade.
Right, drink more Gatorade, not meditate, buy my DVD. Like, I mean, it's just, no one wants to admit that everything is one. It's all in the same. Just figure out how to get to that state more, and you'll do better at everything in life. Like, you know when you're gonna fucking crush it. Like, when the ball's coming at you, it's over. And when you're not, you didn't do the right things to get you in that state of mind.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This is why it's very valuable for professional athletes to have a very strict routine, because then it gives you the ability to get in that state more.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Now, I think that ideally, in an ideal world, you should be able to go in and out of it whenever you wanted, like a monk can. But all right, I mean, the reality is that we're not there, so you can bypass it by creating routine.
It also takes a lot of work and effort to get to that place, and people don't generally do that. So
right. Well, unless you start when you're 12, so that by the time you're 24 and going to the pros, you're at that level.
Oh, yes.
You don't have time. Like, you can't become the way sports are set up now, you become a pro, you've got 6 years, and then you're done. Well, I mean, it's just, like, it is what it is. Yeah. So, it's very interesting. But there's a couple sweet people who are interested. What's the Shaolin monk documentaries where they, like, take the steel blade and they put it here and they just bend it? They strap a rope. They take a rope and they hang it around their chin and they cross their legs and they just hang there. Like,
interesting.
Strong. You want to talk about strong? Watch those motherfuckers.
Yeah,
it's insane. Like, they literally, like, can't pierce their skin with stuff. It's all mind. It's all your mind. Like, your skin didn't just all of a sudden become steel.
That's
literally what they're envisioning.
I was watching something with and now that you're saying this, it's making me think, like, it has to be related in some sense. There's old time magicians. I was watching something with David Blaine, I think. He's a guy, right? And a lot of, like, old time magicians would literally have audience members pierce their bodies with swords, like, take a sword and stab them through from the front, sticking out the back. And it's not like it's not magic, like, they're literally doing it. But yeah, it's something. It has to be something about that state, that mindset, whatever. Like, that's something a little extra.
But I mean, they probably took them through a hypnotic state. Like hypnosis is not fake, right? If you can get somebody to allow you into that aspect of your mind, they literally can take you through things. You know, I mean, they can make you believe that, and they do it all the time. I mean,
that's something I've always wanted to experience. I've always wanted to be hypnotized. I feel like it's got to be crazy.
Probably. I'm not a control freak for that, but
it made me very uncomfortable, but I also feel like it's probably an experience I should experience at some point.
Yeah, like, he's not wrong, and they do it without pain, and it's the same, literally the same as what I'm talking about with, John of God, and then they are able to get you to believe that. And it's just, it is what it is. People don't understand that's the same with, like, the monks. If you're putting something up against the skin and pushing or whatever, and it doesn't cut.
Yeah.
Well, whatever they're doing, they're turning that into their mind, and it's incredible. I mean, it's incredible. So really, that's what I'm looking for through ISOs, is the ability to connect with everything we just talked about. the best way that I can, because then I can write better, then I'm a better doctor, then I'm a better, like, you want me adjusting you in state or out of state? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and I think I mean, I know that's something that people are overlooking when it comes to, training and using isometrics as a form of training is basically everything we just talked about. But, all right, you're getting a little choppy, so
sorry.
it's not your fault. But it might just be the universe telling us it's been an hour. We'll wrap it up. But I mean, before we go, is there anything else you want to, wrap up with, or?
I don't know. I feel like I could probably talk about it for days because it's just
Probably.
like in the next one. But I don't know.
Next week.
If anyone has questions, comment or something, it'll be fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be actually great.
Whatever. I mean, we basically tried mostly everything, so I'll just talk about anything. I mean, whatever. Go watch that everybody watch that documentary. Love it. Or you'll think we're complete lunatics and you won't listen. That's fine. You can't negate. You are listening to this podcast. You already obviously use your brain. So if you watch that documentary, part of you is going to be like, wow, this is very interesting and stimulating. The fact that
if nothing else, it's going to make you think, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. So like, if you're listening to this podcast, you'll like that part of it for sure. Whether you buy into it or not, you're going to be like, huh, interesting.
I like that. I like that state of, because it always reminds me like there's so much more out there that I just don't even come close to understanding.
Right.
Like, and it's humbling, but it's also like in a good way. Like it's nice.
Yep.
Huh.
Yep. It's interesting. Real quick.
Yeah.
Everybody reads. What the heck is that?
Harry Potter.
Oh my God. What?
Harry Potter.
No, but that's awesome.
I know. You guys are a big Harry Potter family.
Yeah. Napoleon Hill. That thinking.
Right. It just said connection lost.
Oh my goodness.
Hold on, let's give it a second. Are you sure?
Oh.
Everything else is gone.